Hello, welcome to InnerQuest. My name is Jay Stone, your host for today, and our guest is Helen Gitlevich. Welcome, Helen.
Thank you, Jay.
Okay, let me tell you a little bit about the very wise and talented Helen. Helen was a medical doctor, and she realized traditional medicine was not for her, so she went into alternative practices and became a Reiki practitioner, Akashic Records, certified teacher and consultant, and now she's also an Access Consciousness certified facilitator and body process facilitator. And so today we're going to focus on access consciousness and body process.
Absolutely.
You know, do you find that you utilize your medical education, your medical experience in what you do?
Sometimes, but it's more about the anatomy, more about how the body functions. And I think I utilize it more in explanation to people how it works, why it works, and the way it works. Not so much when I'm actually practicing it.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start off by having you explain what access consciousness is.
Access consciousness is actually very interesting, very pragmatic system of different tools that help people to get rid of limitation, blocks, any points of view that prevents them from being who they are and achieve the lifestyle or the life that they desire.
Now, you mentioned blocks. You know, there can be a mental block, but can blocks that start out in the mind actually end up as physical blocks in the body?
Absolutely. A lot of times our thoughts, feelings, and emotions create our reality. If we think something, let's say a person thinks, I cannot live like that. The body actually hears that because the body has a consciousness of its own, and it starts creating illnesses that eventually will result in death. It might take 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, but unless the person changes their lifestyle or reverses their thought patterns. I've had a lot of clients who literally created heart disease, cancer, based on that they could not kind of like live the way they did, either marriage, work, or any lifestyle that they chose. So when we started working with that and unlocking those points of view, and sometimes changing the lifestyle, their illnesses either reversed or got better.
So even though you might not be practicing medicine, I still would consider you a healer.
In some way it is.
Yes.
It's my calling in a way that I guess I came into this life for.
Okay. So what led you from medicine to access consciousness?
Well, I always was searching, even as a child. At 11, I already was doing yoga, and I started meditating at 17 or 18.
Were you born in the United States?
No, I was born in Russia, where it was totally forbidden. So I was using the books that were like Xeroxed underground to do asanas and meditation, the yogic meditations.
Wow.
And I was always afraid that people would find out that I was doing that.
Well, and what would have happened if people found out you were doing yoga and meditation?
They might have arrested my parents and myself. I would have ended up somewhere in a foster home, or who knows.
So I would assume drugs were more common than doing yoga and meditation.
Actually, no. Everything was forbidden.
Okay.
Everything was underground. So, including even sexual orientation. Everything was forbidden.
Well, I think with sexual orientation in Russia today, it's still
even with meditation, a lot of times it is still forbidden as well.
Is yoga permitted in Russia today?
In some places, but not as widely as it here.
Why do you think there's such a fear of?
Because it is consciousness.
Ah.
Anything spiritual brings people to more consciousness, more awareness, And
it's harder for the government to control people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They cannot lie anymore because people become aware of their lies. So the more people, that's why I love access consciousness, because that's how we do access consciousness, through those tools.
And what led you from Russia to the United States? Did you come with your parents?
Yes, my mom and my grandma. They chose because at that time it was still a communist country, still Iron Curtain and Evil Empire, as Reagan called us, them. And being Jewish in that environment, I wouldn't be able to do anything. I wanted to be a doctor, so there was no way I would go to medical school in there.
Why is that? They just didn't permit
They
women?
would not permit any Jewish people to get a higher education that would create, again, more consciousness.
Wow. And what were we talking, the 50s? Or?
No, we're talking about 70s.
Oh, 70s.
Yeah, I was graduated from high school in 1980.
And so they know who's Jews and who's not Jewish?
Absolutely. It was written in your passport. Even in school, the teachers had what's called a journal, where each name had the age, birthday, and nationality, and Jewish was considered nationality.
And so were you victim of anti-Semitism?
A lot. I wasn't even allowed to play basketball because kids didn't want me to be there because I was a dirty Jew.
I didn't know the level of anti-Semitism in Russia.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
That's why we were called refugee at that time when we came.
And so how did Access Consciousness change your life?
Oh my God. Let me count the ways. Because at the time when I found Access, it was after my surgery. I had open heart surgery, which actually would stop me being a doctor. And I was very depressed, a lot of anxieties, a lot of medical issues, kind of like complications from the surgery and other things.
Was this like a genetic problem?
They say it, but according to Access, a lot of genetic diseases that we think is genetic is created by our thought processes as well, because we're mimicking our parents, grandparents, and ancestors, thinking that's how it's supposed to be. So with that, saying that, a lot of body processes unlock that. So with Access, what happened was a lot of those things either disappeared or became lessened, including depression, including anxieties, phobias. There was so many things. And the life actually changed a lot.
How so?
I was pretty much homebound at that time. And now
For how long were you homebound?
Quite a few years. Not like homebound, but I would not travel as much. Relationship were quite not there. And so it improved everything, every aspect of my life.
So it sounds like everything in your life from age 11 was getting you to access consciousness.
In some ways, yes.
Do you think you were practicing access consciousness in some way, rudimentary way, before you actually formally studied it?
Yes, we all do. Because Access actually talks about we know much more than we think we do. And the Access empowers to do that. So a lot of times we are much more aware of things. Like everybody knows when they shouldn't do something. But a lot of times we override it and do that.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of like, in some ways, going back and looking at what I've done, when I followed my intuition, that was following Access. When I didn't follow it, when I go against that, that's what anti-consciousness or unconsciousness is. The unconsciousness is more like autopilot. When we do things, we have no idea why, and a lot of it is going from the subconscious thoughts, feelings, and emotions that sometimes came from when we were before even age of 1, from our parents.
Or things that happened in the womb.
Or things that happen in the womb, exactly.
Yeah.
Because the child picks up everything energetically.
Mm-hmm.
And it stores energetically in the body, in the cells.
Well, do you think, is there anything positive or healthy about the unconscious?
Is that? What do you know? In some ways, it's not.
Well, I think there is. You know, like let's say I'm walking out of the house and I forget something, and all of a sudden pops in, "Hey Jay, you forgot something," or I'll be driving somewhere, going, "Oh yeah, I forgot to do that." You know, and to me that's the unconscious.
I think we're talking about two different things.
Okay.
Because I'm talking about unconscious where we are not aware.
Yeah.
You're talking about subconscious
Yeah.
thoughts, feelings, and emotion, which a lot of times connected to our consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
to our higher self, or to our actual like oneness with the universe.
Mm-hmm.
That's not unconsciousness. That's what we call consciousness. When you get those whispers, "Oh Jay, you forgot to do this,"
Yeah.
or "Jay, stop here," because a lot of times we found that people would get, "Oh, stop for coffee," and you stop and you avoid an accident 5 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
That's what consciousness is. The unconsciousness I'm talking about, when we go like a machine through the day,
Yeah.
not aware why we're doing things, how we're doing things, and then by the end of the day we're tired. And it's like, "Oh, what did I do? I don't even remember."
Mm-hmm.
That's the unconsciousness I'm talking about. Anti-consciousness, it's more when we are aware of things,
Mm-hmm.
know what to do or not to do, and do the opposite against ourselves.
Okay.
That's what anti-consciousness is, going against your own consciousness.
And well, why do people do that? Why do people? It's like they're self-sabotaging.
Exactly, that self-sabotage, self-abuse
Mm-hmm.
goes way back to either when they were abused as kids and they continue that pattern, or they observe their parents abusing themselves. And that's what I was talking about, mimicking their parents or grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
Where
Or it could be a question they never learned how to be true to themselves.
exactly.
Yeah.
They have all those limitations that schools and society put on them. That's
Mm-hmm.
another way why they don't do it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
What should be done or what's good for them.
Yeah. So, is access consciousness something that you practice on a daily basis?
Yes.
So, what would your take us through like your daily practice of access consciousness?
It's actually not so much about practicing it as being it.
Mm-hmm.
The major aspect, how is it different from everything else, is never being in the conclusion and not looking for the answers. Always asking questions and being the question. Let's say something is going on. Instead of saying, "Oh my God, how bad this is," or "how good this is," I ask, "Oh, what else is possible here? What can we create here?"
So, moving towards infinite or evolution development.
Right, going to the consciousness, going to infinite possibilities.
When you first started doing access conscious, did you ever envision yourself going further and further and becoming a facilitator?
Not at all. When I went for my first bars class, I had no idea what it was. The girl called me out of nowhere, "There is a bars class," and I'm like, "Okay, I'm going. What is that?" Didn't get it, didn't understand it, the 32 points on the head, energy work, what was that?
32 points?
Yeah, each one is like delete buttons.
Mm-hmm.
That clears your limitations, your points of view that doesn't work for you. So I went for the class. It was amazing, cleared a lot of points of view, cleared a lot of physical aspects.
Did you feel like a shift in your own body?
Huge shift, huge,
Yeah.
much more lightness.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was doing it for myself. The more classes I took, the more I became aware of the limitations and was clearing them, but also was feeling better. Was my mind started getting clearer. I didn't have that chatter constantly, like the judgment, the self-abuse, as I call it. Because, like I was hearing the interview before, and you were talking about judging your body. And that's what we are getting out of it with access. Stop judging. Because the judgment is another way of concluding and being in that stuck place of limitation.
Now, do people come to you for one-on-one work with Access Consciousness?
Sometimes I prefer the classes just because I like teaching people the instruments, the tools of access, so they can do it on their own and they're not dependent on me.
Okay. So you mentioned tools. What are the tools of Access Consciousness?
There is a lot of tools. Some of them are verbal processes, and the major one I would like to introduce to you and to people who are watching this show is light and heavy.
Okay.
So anything that's true will be light. Like your body feels light, you will feel expanded. And when it's a lie, there is a heaviness in the body.
No wonder why collectively we're so fat. and
Exactly.
overweight.
Yeah, we become dense because the lies are very dense. And you can check that with everything. I did that when I was renting a space for my office. I kind of like thought in my head, truth, and then asked my questions. And in the beginning, before I did that, she was telling me how much I will be receiving and what they can do for me. And then when I asked the question, truth, I immediately felt the heaviness when she started talking.
And did you feel it in a particular place of your body?
I feel it in the chest, but people feel it in the different places. Some people feel it in the chest, some people feel it in the head. The whole body, they feel contracted. Each one feels differently. But a lot of people know what feels heavy for them.
And can this heaviness interfere with our blood circulation or cause tension and problems with organs?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The more lies we're exposed to, the more we start contracting.
More lies we tell ourselves.
Or, yeah, because we're so used to tell the truth to everybody else and lie to ourselves. This is our way of protecting ourselves from the environment, which is not true.
Yeah.
This is actually interfering. That's where the blood pressure comes in. That's why the heart disease and diabetes, a lot of illnesses are produced by that.
Through diet, lifestyle, attitude, worldview.
Right, all of that.
Lack of consciousness.
Lack of consciousness. Mostly it's a lack of consciousness and points of view.
But don't you think our culture, our society, just the expectations and the cultural norms,
Right.
we're meant not to be ourselves. You know, we talked about Russia and how they didn't want people to evolve because, you know, they wake up to what's going on. But in some sense, we're no better in the United States. But at least maybe we have opportunity.
We have opportunities.
Yeah, like I wouldn't be a criminal for studying access consciousness in the United States as I would be in Russia.
Exactly. Right now, probably you wouldn't be a criminal anymore, but there might be something else that's happening there too. I'm glad you mentioned expectation, because expectation is another limitation we put on ourselves. It's another judgment. And when we have the expectation, we cannot go beyond that. So we try to destroy all the limitations, including expectation, including projection, including separations. It's another tool of access, kind of like going beyond that.
Okay, well, how would you go beyond expectations?
What we do, we literally destroy them through what's called a clearing statement. And the way we do that is literally going into the questions. back to the questions and back to the light and heavy.
And who asks the questions? You ask of yourself?
You ask of yourself, or somebody like the facilitator asks the participant in the class, or if I work on one-on-one, I ask the question, and then the person looks at their awareness. Because nobody knows more than you do about you. As a facilitator, I don't have to know anything about you. I just ask questions. And you going into your awareness. And the other interesting question is, what else is possible? That's another question. It's a tool of access. Works amazingly. I had a woman in the bank who didn't do any access. I met her at the expo. I gave her that tool. Just by that tool, she wanted to be a manager of bigger branch. Within 3 weeks, she became that, just by asking a question. Because what we are doing, we're energetically asking the universe to contribute.
And when you ask a question, you get an answer.
You don't. You don't look for the answer.